Job Hunting
101.
Providing you with the tools you need in your job search.
Career fairs, resume writing, job banks, veteran programs.
Job Hunting
101.
Hello there, and welcome to another in a series called Job Hunting 101. My name is Dale Green. It says I'm an Employment Security Rep 2 at Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance. What that really means is I'm a career manager, and no, we don't get jobs for anyone. We show people how to get jobs. I'm delighted today to be joined by Matt Hall, who is with a company known as VACO. It's a staffing company, and Tiffany, it rhymes with Vivian Isley, who is the lead counselor, career counselor at Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance. Welcome to our show today. How are you? We're going to be talking about resumes and cover letters. Boy, that first impressions are everything, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I wanted to find out about the resume basics. First of all, is it a misnomer that a resume should be one page?
I don't think so. I think a one-page resume is definitely the way to go, and that's the advice that I give to candidates that I work with. I think you can go on to page 2, but I think that a one-page resume is definitely what you should be shooting for. Okay.
What about one page of paper, but it's double-sided?
That's definitely a no-no.
Okay. That's why we have you here, the experts, to clear things up.
Right.
Why is that not a good thing to do?
To me, it's not professional. Mm-hmm. And you know, if I were looking at a resume and I did not know to turn the paper over, then I would miss a lot of pertinent information. So I think to keep it professional, I think you should, if you're going to go to a second page, you know, just, you know, put your resume on page 1 and then have the other information on the second page, not on the back page.
Right. Before we go any further, I wanted to find out about resume paper. How important is that? How much should people spend? An arm and a leg for resume paper, or should they just keep it to an off-white ivory or something like that?
I think it's fine to use a basic standard white paper. My rules on paper, because I'm going to write over your resume. If I'm sitting in front of you and if I'm conducting that interview, I'm going to write on it. I'm going to write my notes, and that's going to be in my file. I'm not going to hang it on my wall. So my advice is always just keep it straightforward. Keep it, you know, a white page with black type. And for me, the paper itself isn't that important. Just make sure that it's clean. You don't have fingerprints, makeup, or cologne. You don't need any of those things on your resume.
Right. Would you say that a resume is sort of an advertisement of a person's skills, knowledge, and abilities?
In a way, I would say it's an advertisement, or it highlights, you know, their knowledge, skills, and abilities. But I always tell people, be true on your resume. So don't, you know, fabricate any information, because it will come back and haunt you during the interview.
Right.
So.
I agree. Don't lie on your resume.
Okay.
But I tell everyone that I meet with that your resume is your marketing material. That's your marketing tool. Right. So you need it to be that way.
Well, employers use resumes to screen people in and to screen them out. Tell us about how that works.
In my opinion, any employer has a job description, and these days what they're looking for is the candidate that, as tightly as possible, meets those requirements. Mm-hmm. And they're just trying to screen that candidate out. They have a lot of resumes to look at. In many cases, every time I post a position, I'm looking at 500 or 1,000 resumes. And so I do that quickly. I think the statistic is that it takes 7 seconds for a recruiter to look at your resume. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to spend 7 seconds, I'm looking for keywords. I'm looking for maybe the 3 top things on my job description. And I'm going to try and include people that have that, but very quickly screen out those that don't.
Let's really dissect it. Let's say, what are the resume basics? What should it include? And there's no rhyme to the reason in the way you answer. I don't want to go back and forth. You can chime in at any time.
Okay.
I think on the resume, sorry, Matt, you probably should, your name, mm-hmm. You know, your address, email address, and I cannot...
Stop right there. Email address. Let's deal with it. What's appropriate and what's not appropriate?
There are too many things that are not appropriate.
Yeah.
What is appropriate? My name is Dale Green, so I'm going to say dalegreen@hotmail.com. Is that appropriate?
Correct. But not Dale Green is hot at yahoomail.com. So, you know, you got to be careful about, I mean, I see so many different email names that come in, and it's sometimes people don't even think what they're, what they're doing. And you can add or create multiple email addresses, and maybe I always tell people maybe create an email address specifically for jobs to put on your resume.
Someone finally said it.
I think it's a great idea as well, because if you do that, it helps you keep track of where you apply for. There's nothing worse as an employer, as a recruiter, than calling a candidate that you're excited about. And the first thing that they say when they pick up the phone is, where are you calling from? And I don't remember applying for that job. Which job is that? And for me, you should keep a good track of where you're applying for, and a personalized or a specialized email box for your resume is a great idea.
Caller ID unknown. Who is this?
Oh, yeah.
That's a no-no, is it not? When you're getting a call back from a serious employer who's serious about giving you a consideration.
Yeah, and that might be one of the people that I weed out of the process.
We talk all the time about looking for a job being a job in itself. And that just goes along with that. If you're answering the phone and you're in the middle of a job search, it needs to be professional and businesslike, just as if you're sitting at your desk.
What if my email address said dalegreen63@hotmail.com? Does that necessarily mean I was born in '63? What kind of connotation does that have? Or some unusual combination of numbers, or numbers and alphabets or characters?
I think people would try and read into any personalized email address. They're going to try and read things into that. And we'll probably talk about this later. I know we will, that there is forms of discrimination in the workplace, and that comes up when people are at that starting process of looking at your resume, looking at your email address. I would avoid using as many of those types of personalizations in your email address as possible. I think your dalegreen@hotmail.com is probably the way to go.
Before we went on the air, we talked about a clear and relevant objective. And I think I gave an example of I'm applying for a financial analyst position with Waste Management Services in Temple Terrace, Florida. Does that strike a bell, or will that get your attention, either one of you?
It really wouldn't get my attention. I would like to see in the objective statement power words, such as seasoned professional, detailed oriented, something that will grab my attention, because as Matt said earlier, going through hundreds of resumes, you get tired, the eyes get tired. So give me something that brings me back to life. So I would actually say power words, action words in that objective statement.
I think detail is great. If you're applying to waste management, I think it's fantastic that when I open up your resume as a recruiter for that company, that I might see that you've specialized your resume to my position. I think that's awesome. But I think if you do that, you need to make sure that you reread your resume every time you send it out. Because if your objective is specialized too greatly, then I think it can hurt you. If you're going to say to the prospective employee in your objective, my objective is to find a position in healthcare, but then you apply for a waste management company, they're going to think that forever your dream has been to work in healthcare, and they're going to be scared that they can't give you that job because you're going to move into healthcare at some stage.
Right. Let me throw this out to you and our audience to think about, to talk about. A one-size-fits-all resume doesn't necessarily fit all, does it? If you're applying for different jobs, and one-size-fits-all resume, here's my resume, here are all of my qualifications, I know I can do the job, and you figure it out. That's not the way to go, is it?
Not at all.
I don't think so. I think it can work. If your resume is basically focused on your core strengths and some real detail on the elements that you've succeeded in the past, I think that can be fine. But what you definitely want to make sure is, again, that if you do specialize your resume, that it is coherent, that it matches the job description. I think it would be fantastic to have a specialized resume for each position that you apply for, which draws on the job description that you've applied for. If a client is looking for real strong customer service skills, your resume needs to say that you have outstanding customer service skills.
Right. How important is it to add significant or pertinent education, training, and accomplishments? That's important. In fact, when we look at Employ Florida, we go to My Resources, My Background, the candidate can put all of who's the best person to brag on a person? It's usually themselves, right? So start bragging. Why is that important?
Well, only you know what you've accomplished, and nowadays resumes are more like performance-based, like a performance that you would get at your job, situation, action, and results. Excuse me. So for me, I would like to see a resume that has, the type of education to make sure that you meet those minimum requirements, because a lot of times when you're looking at resumes and you're trying to go through the fluff, weed out, as we say. We want to make sure that number one, the individual has the educational requirements, if there are any. Also, make sure that the individual talks about their accomplishments while at other positions at different companies to see if this is a good fit for the role in which you're hiring for.
So in other words, you should explain, what have you done for me lately? Or what have you done, I should say, what have you done for the company, your last employer, lately, right?
Yes, I would.
I think so, and I think you should go into detail. I think you should quantify.
Be specific.
Yeah, quantify those achievements. If at your last position, you were a customer service rep and you picked up 150 calls a day, well, that to me sounds like you were in a real high pressure, high volume environment. I think it's much better to shout about those achievements in a real specific term.
Yeah.
Okay. What about things like hobbies and marital status and things like that? Is that really relevant? Should that be on a resume or even a cover letter?
No.
Yeah.
Too much information?
That's too
TMI.
much.
I think it's distracting. I think if people are going to look at your resume, and again look at that resume and decide whether or not you're a great fit for what they're looking for, too much information could be distracting. And also, I think that these days employers look at a resume and they want to see that candidate is their future employee. Sorry, a future employee.
Sure.
And how much time is that employee going to spend working for me? And how much of that time are they going to spend working for the 10 nonprofit organizations that they got listed on their resume? I think it's great that they do so much for the community, but I think from an employer's point of view, it can be distracting, and it does raise the question of how distracted can they be?
Right. References furnished upon request. My gosh, either furnish the references or don't furnish the references. Would you not say? References, shouldn't they be on a separate sheet of paper?
Most definitely. Nowadays, the resume style has changed.
Sure.
Back in the day, as we say, they used to have references upon request written on the resume. My personal opinion, I don't think, you have to do that anymore, but make sure on your references page, maybe, the header that you used, make sure it's consistent, and make sure that whenever you highlight or identify references, that maybe you put the name, phone number, or email address, and how do you know this person? Let's say, for example, if, I worked with Matt on a project and he was project leader, he would be a great reference as to how I performed. So maybe I would say, Matt, Matt Hall, give his phone number, maybe email address, and then put just a little sentence, not anything long, say project manager. So that when the recruiter or hiring manager does call, then they'll know who they're asking for and who they're talking to.
Right. But before you put Matt as a reference, shouldn't you call Matt and give him a heads up?
Yes, I should give Matt a heads up. Yes.
Don't let him be blindsided, because if you haven't seen Matt in 2.5 years, yet you're still communicating with an email or know he's going by the pool or something like that, waving him at the golf course, you still want to say, listen, somebody's going to be calling. Can you give them a shout out for me? For
sure, and you want to check that those references are going to be good references. We call on references of every candidate that we meet with at VACO, and in doing so, you find out who are great references for people to have, who are going to speak really well of that candidate, and who's maybe not going to give as good a reference. And if these are your references and they're on your resume, you probably want to make sure that they're good references.
Yeah, Matt Hall, let me see. I remember 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
they need to be able to remember you. First
yes, yes.
But sorry, Dale, in my opinion, so many people have references upon request at the bottom of their resume, and in my opinion, it's not necessary. I think it's a given that when people ask for references, they will be given, and I think that's a place, or that information is for the application. There's a difference between your resume, which, as we've kind of discussed, is an advertising tool, it's a marketing tool. There's a difference between your marketing tool, your resume, and the application.
Right. What about identifying skills? Direct, indirect, I call them direct, indirect, or transferable skills. How can you craft that to say that, listen, I can do that job? Shouldn't you, let me just throw this out. If you have 7 requirements on a job that's in Monster Career Builder at a certain company site or even Employ Florida, if they give 7 requirements, shouldn't you talk about the 7 different ways that you can meet those requirements? Shouldn't you be specific about that?
Yes, and one thing people fail to do is to read that job description and to make sure to identify with the keywords, as we say, and then speak to those on your resume.
And I think it's important where they lie on your resume as well. I always tell people, do a skill section. You know, do a skill section of your strengths and accomplishments and proficiency at the top of your resume, and it doesn't need to be lengthy.
Yeah.
I would keep it minimal, but I'd have it detailed.
Well, shouldn't that be the crux instead of an objective per se?
Oh, for sure.
Is have all of the bragging, the 7, 8, or 9 bragging bullets at the top?
I think it's so much more important.
7 seconds.
Because quite often an objective won't say anything, like we discussed. You have an objective be so general that it's not telling that employer anything that everyone else isn't saying. On the resume, everyone is hardworking, right? Everyone is diligent, hardworking, honest, and a great timekeeper. What we find out in actuality, when we hire every employee is different. And I think it's much more valid to have a real concise but detailed set of skills, and that might be software, it might be strengths, it might be areas that you've performed in the past, maybe even industries. I think it would be great to have those things in a real concise skill section at the top of a resume.
Right. What about a success story? Should you mention verbally a success story? Should you put it somewhere in your cover letter, or should you just put it on your resume to say that I collected $1.2 million in back collections, if you will, outstanding invoices?
I would definitely put that under accomplishments within your resume, and we have to realize that we can't get everything on a resume, so make sure that you can have a cover letter, which we're going to talk about that later, I'm sure, Dale, but I think that you should put some type of accomplishments under your job title.
Sure.
Yeah, quantifiable things to measure.
I would have it there underneath each job title, in amongst the bullet points of what you physically did at that job. I would include accomplishments. So
that goes with the old thing of who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you did something.
Exactly.
Sure.
Let's talk about the type of resumes. But before we go to that, I'm going to get to some career assessments. www.employflorida.com, www.mynextmove.org, and www.careerpath.com. Why are those necessarily good things to use when trying to express yourself?
I think that can help individuals who, let's use, for example, someone who's worked at a company for 20 years, maybe they've been laid off. Maybe the job, the field that they were in is non-existent anymore. So they may have to think about career transition. So sometimes by, I think, doing these assessments, it can really help them identify with some skills that may fit them based on, do you enjoy talking with people? Do you enjoy working on multiple projects? By the end of those career assessments, it can identify things that may be of interest to you or some things that you might want to check out.
Okay. Now, to take care of gaps in unemployment or not being employed, why is it a good idea to volunteer, even if it's 10 hours a week?
Oh, for sure. I think it's very important to do that. And if you're at the beginning of your career, I think internships are great as well.
And externships, maybe.
Absolutely. We meet with a lot of candidates which are just about to graduate from college. And to talk to that, and I'm sure we can talk about volunteering as well, sorry. But with internships, externships, that really is a distinguishing factor for employers when you're looking at two candidates for the same job. If one candidate is freshly, leaving college, another candidate is doing the same thing, but they have 8 months, even as an unpaid intern, 25 hours a week in a human resources department. That kind of experience will give you that job experience, so you can jump straight into the workforce.
Right. What's a chronological resume?
A chronological resume is order, the order that things happen.
Last job first and
yes.
then going back like that.
I would not advise someone who's been unemployed for a long period of time to use that type of resume, a chronological resume.
What's a functional resume?
Functional is going to really focus and specialize on maybe projects or specializations that a candidate has. So it's going to talk throughout the main part of the resume more about achievements, specific skill sets, ways in which that person has worked on a project, completed a project, and seen its success.
Right. What about a combination on both? And I also want to touch on skills resume, but let's talk about the combination functional and chronological. Yeah, functional and chronological.
I think that's a great way to do it. As we discussed, I think it's nice to have a mixture. I personally, for most candidates that I meet with, I prefer to see a regular chronological resume with the most recent position right there at the top. I tell people that I meet with that really the last 5 or 6 years of your employment history are the most valid. That's where you spent the most of your recent time. And with a chronological resume, you get the opportunity to talk right at the top of your resume about what's freshest in your mind, where your skill sets are freshest, where they're sharpest. But then also include some of those more more project-driven experiences and examples within that resume as well.
Right. Now that we've got our audience tuned in and enjoying and I'm sure getting a lot of information, before we go to a break, I wanted you, Tiffany, rhymes with Vivian. Okay, I'll get it right here. Tell me a little bit about yourself in a minute.
In a minute, I'm Tiffany.
Because the employers do ask that.
Okay. I'm Tiffany Nisley. Now, let me ask you something. Do you want me to do it as if I was in an interview, or do you really want to?
Any shape, fashion, form.
Okay.
Currently what you're doing, I guess.
Currently, I work at TBWA as a lead career counselor, trying to help individuals who are unemployed get training to help them jump back in the job market to make them marketable. Prior to this, I was in a professional HR representative for the last 12 years, working for a big four firm, and also I've worked with not-for-profit organizations as well.
Great, you bring a lot to the table. Matt, what about you?
I can't talk for a minute about that, but...
well, 38 seconds,
okay.
And not a second more.
I have 37. With my career here in Tampa Bay, I've been here in Tampa Bay for the last 8 years. I am a recruiter with Vaco. Vaco is a nationwide recruiting and staffing firm. And I kind of describe to people that we help companies within Tampa Bay with any of their corporate recruiting. And so my day-to-day is meeting with candidates, and it might be accounting, it might be clerical, or it might be customer service. We have other staff at the office that work on IT and higher-level consulting positions. But I spend my day meeting with people. I sit down, I talk them through their resume, and we discuss ways in which they can improve it. And really what we do is we get to the bottom of what their skill set is and where they should be applying. And in my case, which jobs I'm working on right now that they qualify for, and where we can place them.
Right. We're going to take a break in just a moment, and I'm holding up this pen because this pen is very important. It allows you to write things down, and we want our audience members, the people who are looking at this in this latest series of Job Hunting 101, to write things down, to take notes. Now, let's say you've applied online, and the employer asks you to fill out a survey. You don't want to come to the employer and say, "Look, ma'am, say, do you?" I'll call it a pat down. Say, "Do you have a pen? Why should you have your pen, your own pen, that you've taken on a test drive?"
Well, to me, that makes me look at that person as being prepared, because I don't know if I would hire someone that is not prepared. And sometimes you don't have the luxury to always give somebody a pen. So be prepared.
I think it's important to be prepared, but don't be over-prepared. You don't need to take your entire home office with you. Sometimes
travel lightly.
travel, make sure you got everything you need, but don't take too much. Sometimes we meet with candidates and they put it all out there on the table. They put every application that they filled out in the last year on the table.
Too much information and then
no portfolios, like huge.
And too much stuff.
Yeah.
We'll be back to continue this very interesting conversation on our series Job Hunting 101 with resumes and cover letters in just a few moments. Job seekers, you can upload your resume, view job postings, and research labor market information at employflorida.com.
Job hunting
101.
Welcome back to Job Hunting 101. We're delighted to welcome on this portion of our program, once again, Tiffany Vimes with Vivian Isley. Right?
Hi, well, I'm glad to be back.
Okay, and Matt Hall, who is Director of Staffing at VACO. And by the way, Tiffany works as a career counselor at Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance. We were talking, we had a lot of discussion off the air, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Well, let's put it on the air. Let's talk about the resume format and the content, italics, what font size, and all those good things. Any one of you can start off anywhere, anytime.
I think it's important just to keep things simple. I think you can over-elaborate and make your resume a little bit more confusing than it needs to be. I think the rule of thumb is just keep it simple. Stick to some of the tried and tested that you seem to favor, the Times New Roman and the Arial and those kind of things. And definitely steer away from fonts that may be a little bit more casual.
Right. What about those combination fonts? I mean, there's one font here, and then when you get further down, there's another. What are you doing? Shouldn't it be pretty consistent?
I think it should be consistent. That tells me that the individual just threw something together. They didn't proofread it. Sometimes it's good to print your resume out after it's completed so that you can see those things. Also, I've seen people put pictures on their resume, like clip art, and that's a big no-no with resumes.
I think clip art and graphic design is fantastic if you're applying for a graphic designer job. I think the more the better. For the rest of us, I think we should keep that to a minimum, keep our font size reasonable. I think personally, and candidates that I meet with probably think I'm crazy because I can spot a size of a font from the other side of the room and I'll tell them, hey, that's a size 10. Might look better if you make it a size 11. I think 10 or 11 font size is definitely the way to go.
Other than HIPAA or CPR, why is it not a good idea to go with all caps? And especially when people do their job title and where they work. I mean, I know you don't want to get to the shift or keep going back and forth. That's a lazy person's way out, isn't it?
Yes, and I would say, just like we discussed during the break, it's kind of like you're shouting on the resume.
Not a shout out, but a shout.
Yeah, like you're shouting.
Yes.
And also, if it's not in that field, say for example CPR, I might not know what that is. If you're applying for like an administrative assistant position, I might not know what the acronyms CPR means. So sometimes it's better either to leave it off or to spell it out so that I'll know what CPR in caps means.
If it's important, I think a lot of people will include maybe very specific in-house software on their resume, and they'll go at great length to describe that software. They'll talk about the name of the software and what they did in it. I think you can be more general. If your system was ABC software, but you know that no one else in the country works with that piece of software, we don't need to talk about it. We can maybe generalize that, and we don't need to put large A, large B, large C.
Right.
That's a good point.
Not bullets, but after the bullet, after you made a bullet point, should there be a point as in a period or not?
I think not.
I would agree. I guess it kind of depends on who's looking at it, but it might not look so professional to have the.
Because it's not a sentence. No. So if it was a sentence that said, "I also cleaned the the plants," or cared for the plants. Yeah. That's a sentence, but that's also a skill. So I'm not sure if you really need to put a period after it.
I don't think so, but make it consistent. If you've where some candidates will slip off is similar to the different types of font and the different size font. You might have two resumes and you've combined it, so you're going to copy and paste. your earlier resume into your new resume. Just make sure that it's all consistent. If you've got bullet points after bullet points later in your resume, make sure that you have them at the top. But in my opinion, no bullet points.
Right. White space. Too much, not enough. Sometimes when we talk about that one-page resume, we pretty much crowd it all the way, the top and the bottom, and we just try to jam everything on one page. But then there should be some eye-catching, eye-pleasing space.
Yeah. Make it an easy read for the hiring manager or the recruiter. We don't want to hunt and peck for things, but also make it pleasing to the eye. Too much crowding on a page, you'll lose interest. I mean, I know I would.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the same philosophy goes with borders as well. If you have a border around your resume, I prefer not to have a border. I think it restricts the type that you have there. I think it makes it difficult to look at.
Yep.
And it cuts down on the white space. And again, if you're looking at a lot of resumes, it's nice to be able to pick out words that you're looking for. It's nice to be able to hunt for what you need, find the details you're looking for. And if you fill every single inch of that page, it becomes overwhelming. As a recruiter, I can't look at everything on that page. I need to look at the highlighted areas.
Right. I've been working for the same entity, governmental agency, for 30 years, but yet I want to work some more years. What's the rule of thumb in terms of listing different jobs, different duties, different responsibilities over that 30-year span?
Well, I think what I tell individuals who come from the government and they're going to try to apply for a different position within that government entity, what I tell them to do is, say, for example, Hillsborough County. You would put Hillsborough County, and then I ask people to tab over and put the years. Let's just say 2012 to 1990. Underneath that, list the title that you had, the position that you held, and then tab over, lining everything up, and putting the time frame in which you held that position. Just say if it was maintenance worker, or if it was administrative assistant, what was the time frame that you worked in that position? Then, as normal, what was the situation, action, and result, and then go to the next position that you held.
I like that, action and result. Is there the same rule of thumb for the private sector?
I don't think so. With a lot of candidates that I meet with, they might do that. If you've worked with a large insurance company for 15 years, a lot of candidates, actually my wife does this. She worked for a large insurance company for many years, and when she got an internal promotion, she would go back to that original resume and she'd add to it, to the point where she had a 6-page resume. And that's a lot of resume, and this is your employer, so they know what it is that you do. In the private sector, in my opinion, let's stick to what you've done most recently. Let's stick to your last job. If the last 2 years out of those 15 you spent as a payroll specialist, whereas you may have started as a file clerk, let's talk about your last few years as a payroll specialist, because I think that's going to be more valuable to the employer. I think that experience is going to be more valid, and I would just have one title, one set of dates.
Right. Another faux pas, if you will, is people put down that they've done a job from, as you said, 2012, or let's say 2011, back to 1990, and they don't say contribute. In other words, they don't do past tense, they do present tense. Well, it's in the past. How important is that?
Well, they don't work in that position, in that capacity any longer.
Right.
So it is good to highlight that, because that can make the recruiter or hiring manager confused. Do you still work there? Are your dates consistent? Or, did you proofread before you, presented your resume to me? But one thing I want to add is I get resumes all the time that look like a novel. So the ones that just looks like a paragraph. So when you're looking at those multiple jobs, when people have been at companies for a long time, reading through that paragraph with no bullet points is really not a good idea.
I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think anyone's going to read through your novel. I think, again, people are looking for real, concise, detailed bullet points. You want to go into a lot of detail. You want to tell people the specifics about what you did. Again, as we talked about earlier, the successes you've had, the projects you've worked on, the cause and effect of what you did. But the best way to do that is with a real concise bullet point, so that you start that bullet point with the work that you did, with the success, maybe with the software that you worked with the specific quantifying factor about how you did that work, rather than have it be at the end of a paragraph, because that could be really important, but no one's going to get to it.
In a point-counterpoint format, professional skills summary or an objective? I'll ask both of you too.
Well, you prefer more of a
professional skills,
summary.
or summary
at the top.
At the top.
Summary statement.
Especially if someone's been working for a long period of time. But if it's like an intern or someone, say for example, stay-at-home wife or a Mr. Mom that has not worked in a long time, then maybe an objective statement would be appropriate. But for me, I prefer a professional statement, because if you've worked for a long period of time, then you should be able to articulate maybe in 2 to 3 sentences, not a chapter in a book, but just to highlight some things to talk about yourself.
For me, Dale, though, when I look at a resume, honestly, I don't read the objective. And if it's...
What do you do in those first 7 seconds?
My 7 seconds, I look at 3 things. The first thing I look for is your job title. Because if your job title says you're a nurse, but you're applying for my retail position, but you're a nurse, I'm probably not going to consider you for that position, because you want to be a nurse, and that's where your experience lies. The second thing I look for definitely is that employment detail. How long have you worked at each employer? Because that's important. And the third thing I look for is usually what I kind of term my value added, or that one thing on that resume which is going to kind of be that skill set, or maybe that education level that I look for. So the third thing I look for is maybe a bachelor's degree, or I might be looking for a certain type of experience within a job field.
When is it time to back off your skills? In other words, you talked about a bachelor's degree. Well, I have a master's and I have a doctorate. But then the employer is going to say, the hiring manager is going to say, oh, you probably want too much money because you have all these skills, I can't afford to pay you. You're going to leave in 6 months.
Well, it depends on the position as well.
One that you're overqualified for, let's say.
Yeah, if you're overqualified, if an employer feels that you're overqualified for a position, what you need to do is to try to give them some points as to why you would be an attribute. Maybe I bring years of experience so that I can coach those who are new in the business. So try to turn that negative into a positive as to why you would be an attribute to that position, to that company.
Good advice. Why should spell check be your best friend?
Because why not? It's there. You can use spell check. It doesn't cost anything. The worst thing is getting that resume in front of your interviewer and them having them point to spelling errors and mistakes on your resume if you get that interview.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's the kernel. I sold kernels of corn or whatever. And then there's the colonel in the military. Thesaurus, help.
And would you want somebody really representing your company who does not take the time to spell check or looking at the thesaurus before they use a word? Because then if they get in the company, get hired, then what if they send a letter to a customer or a client with misspelling? So.
Oh, for sure. I think 2 things we've kind of already talked about. People are looking for ways to exclude you from that interviewing process. They have your resume. They have a lot of other resumes. It's things like that, simple spelling mistakes that they could look upon unfavorably and not give you that interview.
I'm wondering what's the biggest difference that you could share with our audience regarding the difference between a cover letter and a resume.
I think a cover letter is like, I tell people, like a vitamin. You take a vitamin to supplement and give you those additional nutrients that you need. Right? So a cover letter is that vitamin to your resume. Now, I do advise individuals not to put the same thing you put in your resume and put it in your cover letter, because that'll be redundant information. This is your time to kind of go a step further and talk about other things that you can contribute to that job.
But be specific also. If you're going to include a cover letter, and I'll be honest, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you need to include a cover letter. I'm perfectly happy with an email arriving at my desk with an attachment and the subject title of that email being customer service representative position. I open up the resume, I try and look for, is that the right candidate for me? I don't necessarily need a cover letter. But if you do include a cover letter, you need to make sure that it's specific to the job that you're applying for.
Yes,
There's nothing wrong
definitely.
with saying, thank you, Mr. Jones, for the opportunity to, for you to review my resume. Because my name isn't Mr. Jones. That was the last person you applied for. So you need to make sure if you use a cover letter that it's either every time or proofread it. Make sure you're absolutely sending it to the right position.
Let's say there's a job fair coming up, and I want to stand out. I want to do something a little different. And there are a stack of resumes on the table with this employer. But I come along and I give my business card. My business card has my 8 bullets for the position I'm applying for, and I give the employer my business card. Does that impress you if you as a hiring manager?
Not at a job fair, but for a mixer or some type of networking event, that will be great. So if you're at a job fair, I would expect a resume. If I was at a mixer where it was different companies and individuals looking for employment or exploring their options, a networking card, like a business card with those 8 bullet points would be great, appropriate for me.
Sure, I completely agree. But follow the same rules. If you have a business card that you're going to give out at a networking function, make sure it's clear and concise and that it's not too outlandish. Make sure that it's professional, business-like, that it makes sense.
No graphic designs, no paisleys, no 60s wallpaper.
If you're a wallpaper designer, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I would definitely do that.
Good point. And another thing in that realm is that we talked earlier about the email address. I gave my example, dalegreen@hotmail.com. But also the voicemail, when people are calling you back, hi, you've reached Dale Green, I'm not available, please leave a message and I'll call you back. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Not me. You
Yeah.
know where I'm going with this.
No
Not,
music.
yeah.
I prefer not the music. I mean, sometimes I appreciate it.
Even if it's
Or
Beethoven.
television too.
Sure. And if it's a song I like, I can appreciate it as much as the next person, but I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for, you've reached Dale Green, please leave a message after the tone.
Wow. What about smooth jazz? If you don't like smooth jazz, obviously, then.
I love smooth jazz.
Keep it professional.
But you don't want to
and
listen to
clean.
20 minutes as a hiring manager.
I do not want to listen to 20 minutes.
Before
I want
the
to make
beat.
that phone call. And then I want to leave a message or I want to speak to that person. And I think it's true. Also, if you're going to leave a message, if you're the job seeker and you're leaving a message on hiring manager's voicemail, practice it. You've got all the time in the world. It wouldn't be the end of the world to sit down before you make that call and plan it and plan about what you're going to say. Maybe have it written out in front of you because the last thing you want to do is make that call, which is important because you want to call back. But to fumble your lines or to make it too long. If you leave your telephone number at the end of that message and your message is 1.5 minutes long, it's probably going to get deleted before they get your message.
Or if I give my number 634-5789, what do you say?
Exactly.
634. Come on now.
Say it twice.
right.
This is Dale Green. My number is 123. 2345. The reason for my call is, again, this is Dale Green, and repeat your number.
Social networking sites. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
LinkedIn is one thing, but what somebody has on their Facebook account and other social networking sites after they have a well-presented resume, and then comes the character issue.
Well, we see it all the time on a daily basis.
And why do people do it? That's what I wonder why.
Yeah, they have an argument, family argument with Uncle Bob, and so they put everything that Uncle Bob is saying to them, including with the rest of the family. And nowadays, employers are looking at Facebook pages and whether it's right or wrong, this is what's happening to see what type of person that they're bringing into their organization. So I would suggest to individuals with Facebook pages, try to keep it professional. I say that all the time. And hide or delete individuals that really are not going to help you. If you have these family disputes, wait until a family function or when you can talk to them on the phone or in person. But Facebook is really not the avenue, especially when you're looking for employment.
Sometimes I wonder why people put all that on there.
Yeah, you probably want to avoid it. A simple Google search will pull up 5 or 6 different websites that you appear on. And there are things that employers can't screen for, but they might. And you don't want to have things on that profile that could lead to a negative decision, whether or not they meet you or they don't meet you.
Wow. That's interesting, and we've already covered we have not covered, I should say, the message on the voicemail. Or did we?
Well, we kind of did.
Yes, kind of did. Hi, I'm not available. Please leave a message, and I'll call you back. Anything other than that, anything risque, anything that would suggest that you have a character that's not becoming...
Sure. I mean, I think it's great to leave a personalized message. I think it's great to tell people why, the position you're applying for. And, if you're going to make that concise, why not tell someone why you'd be a great fit? Why not personalize it slightly? But yeah, you want to make sure, and again, you want to rehearse it. If it's an important interview that you want to get, and you've read that job description, and that's your job, then take the time to think about it and think about the message and what that portrays about you.
Right. You had a comment on that?
I pretty much agree with what Matt says. So, just keep it clean, professional, short.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Right, because first impressions are everything. First impressions with a resume, a cover letter if you use it, how it looks, how it's presented. This is real good information. I really do appreciate all the time you've taken to share these very intricate details with our viewers today. Anything else that you'd like to share that I may have missed regarding all you wanted to know about cover letters and resume, but were afraid to ask?
I would just repeat what I tell everyone, in that it's your marketing tool. There's a time and a place for certain details that's on the application. Thinking about it as a marketing tool, highlight your selling points, give people the sizzle, what they want to hear. But you don't need to tell them your life story. You don't need everything that you've ever done since you left high school on that resume. Just stick to the plus points that you have, the things that you're going to bring to the table, your skill set. And don't worry about things which are maybe too far back in your resume or are not valid anymore.
How important is it to follow up after you've met an employer at a job fair or wherever? How important is it to follow up, like voicemail, email, or something like that?
I think it's very important to follow up, because that shows the hiring manager or recruiter that you're very interested in the role, or to come in for a second interview. One thing is that I used to get is cards. Someone took the time to send a little thank you card through the mail. I mean, that was very meaningful, because that says to me they took out the time to say thank you. It wasn't through email. So I think email,
for sure,
phone calls, or notes. Yeah.
Again, I would have someone proofread that note. If you're going to write a personalized handwritten note, have someone proofread it to make sure that you haven't made any spelling errors on that. And I'd approach it in the same way that you would do everything else. Be professional. And there's a line. I think a thank you note is fantastic, and I love to receive a thank you note from candidates that I've met with. I think it's great to follow up with a call to thank you for the interview. I don't think it's ideal to leave 2, 3, or 4 voicemails. I think that becomes too much, and it speaks to how you might be as an employee.
Right. What about people who try to, in other words, they get a card from the card store, and it's not a plain card. In other words, it's by like a Hallmark or American Greeting. That's not very original, is it? No.
I would just say a small thank you card, a blank card, just something clean, plain, and simple.
I agree. Keep it simple. That said, I think some personalization can be good fun. For example, if you met with someone after the interview and you guys were talking about a certain subject, a certain part of the job, maybe someone took a vacation recently or was on vacation after you met them, I think it's fine to say, I hope you enjoyed your vacation.
Yeah.
Right. How often should someone contact an employer after the fact? We talked about follow-up, but when is it too much to be too persistent? There's, I guess, a difference between being persistent, being assertive, versus being aggressive.
Yeah, maybe that's called stalking just a little bit.
Security, okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, there's definitely a line that you do not want to cross, and I think everyone that you apply for the most part, is going to be a professional, and they have received your resume. They're not, they didn't lose your resume, so there's in many cases no reason to follow up more than once. I think once you follow up once, they know you're interested in the position, and while sometimes it may be difficult, I think you need to be patient and just sit back and wait for the call to come. And if you've got the right skill set for what they're looking for, and you fit with what they need in that position, they will call you back.
Right. We talk about resumes needed, the number, the quantity, at a job fair. It's the worst thing to happen that in the rain or the heat or whatever, there are 40 employers and you have 25 resumes. Now, that's not to say that you're qualified to fill positions for all 40, but you never know. There might be something that, there might be a panel of people, oh, can I get an extra copy of your resume? So why is it important? I think I'm asking and answering the same question. Why is it important to have enough quantity?
Well, you don't want anyone to be disappointed, and that last person you meet with may be the person. That might be the person which is going to get you your next job. So it's always going to be important to take more than you need. But these days, resumes can be stored in a lot of different places. I mean, you can have a paper resume, and I think that's 100% appropriate, and that's all you need. If you're attending a job fair or an interview or a casting call or whatever it is, I think it's great to have a paper resume to hand to people and make sure that you have enough. These days, however, you can definitely go ahead and store that resume online, and that might be a case of you can walk up to that employer and say, I'm sorry, I was just over at ABC company. I gave them my last resume, but I'm very interested in your company. Here's where you can find my resume online, and give them that www address so they can write it down and they can find you later.
Is it appropriate at all to have a flash drive with, say, 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabyte, and say, well, listen, here's my, can you look? You know the employer might have a laptop. Now, whether they have access to a printer at a job fair or not, I don't know, or even in their office. But I ran out of something happened to my computer. My service got suspended. Can we just look at it? Why is that appropriate or not appropriate?
It's not appropriate. Because you're making the employer work for you. If you have that thumb drive and you run out of resumes and you know that the job fair will last for another 30 minutes to an hour, and you have time to run to Kinko's or FedEx Kinko's, or you have time to go make a quick, a couple of copies, then that's what you should do. But you should never put the burden on someone else when it's your responsibility to come to a job fair.
I think it goes back to what you said about the pen, about being prepared. And that's why you should have several pens. Take them on a test drive to make sure that they work. Don't sit up there and try to sign something and say, oh boy, do you,
And be proactive. Be proactive. Make sure that you can show that employer that you've covered your bases, that you're prepared. And it might be as simple as other things. We didn't touch too much on LinkedIn, but if you don't have your resume with you, your LinkedIn profile for people which are on there is a great tool for employers to use, and you can actually go on there and you can print it out.
Right. Now, a lot of employers right now are hiring people for part-time positions because they can get away with not paying the benefits if you're under 30 hours a week. So in a situation, would it be advisable, let's say if an employer or a candidate worked 25 hours a week, they volunteered 5 hours a week, and they took some training to up their skills, to up their skill set so that they could qualify for more positions?
Oh, yes, I think that is a good idea, because experience is experience at the end of the day. And we as recruiters, human resources, and hiring managers, we know what's going on today with the failing economy, and people may jump from job to job, or they may use volunteer, work as experience. I mean, you may receive an award for doing a project for a community event. You still did that community event. You still pulled it off. So for how many people did you do that for? So that also can tie into your work experience.
I think so too, and I think be proactive with it. To be able to do that, you actually have to step outside. You actually have to be proactive.
Yeah.
You actually have to sign up for a training. You can do training online. You can do training with agencies that are there to help you increase your skills. And there's nothing wrong with shouting about that. I would totally bridge that gap in any employment situation with a, hey, just to let you know, I'm now certified with Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
Right. Let's give a scenario, if you will, where everything has been done. Cover letter or resume has been presented. Should you ask the employer to hire you? In other words, would you offer me the job if I can provide you a person who comes to work early, stays late, is customer focused with my internal and external customer, and I solve problems and I do good work, detail oriented? Can I get you to offer me the job? Is that appropriate?
I think it's appropriate to ask for the job. Yeah, I think it shows your willingness to do the job, and I think it shows that you're, again, proactive. I would definitely tell people to ask for the job. If you want that job, ask for the job.
Right. How much negotiation should you do 6 months from now? Let's say the end of the year, around November or December, I have, as you said, a wedding to go to, and I bought my ticket. By the way, here's my ticket right here. You know, you see my ticket or my confirmation online. How much should you ask for at the beginning?
For sure. I mean, I definitely wouldn't bring that up in an interview process. I would want to keep things as positive as possible. I wouldn't want to raise anything that could be considered as a negative. That said, if you are offered the position, I would definitely let them know up front in a very positive manner. Hey, Dale, thank you so much for offering me this job. I'm going to be very, very excited to do the job. I'm excited to work for your company. I just wanted to let you know that I have 1 week's vacation set up for May. And I think it's how you present that. Most employers for a long-term position are not going to have a problem with a prearranged vacation, a prearranged medical appointment. It's just in the way that you present that information.
But I think on the other hand, if the employer says, okay, that shouldn't be a problem, and we get closer to the time, like 2 weeks out, and you told everybody, hey, I'm coming home for Thanksgiving for this event, then something comes up where the workload demand says that, oh, you need to be there. We're going to be working around the clock those 2 days. You need to eat that ticket, don't you? That airline ticket or that?
Yeah,
Yes.
pretty much. Unless they have someone that could cover for you. But
Right.
if they're using everybody and there's no spare staff, then yeah, you may have to eat the ticket.
Yeah, you have to be flexible, and I think, like you said, in your first 90-day period, you're still kind of interviewing for that job. Even though you've got the job, and even though you're sat at that desk, you're still interviewing for it, and you want to put your best foot forward and be as flexible as you can.
And I think, too, don't let your body language change. Don't let your body language change, I should say, when there's something that comes up. You know, the rolling the eyes in the head and shaking your head, and just that's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's never good to have a poor attitude. I mean, you know, business is business and work is work. You know, so.
And pleasure is pleasure.
Yes.
And should you put something like, I want to be a team player, or I am a team player? I've heard different opinions on that, whether you should include that in your cover letter of your resume, and that's probably the last thing we have time for today.
I don't think so. I think with your resume, you should stick to the facts. You should stick to statistics and achievements that talk to what you've done for your employers in the past. I think you should steer clear of things which are honestly things which everyone has on their resume. Everyone is a hard worker on their resume.
Yeah,
everyone's diligent and honest, and everyone is always there on time on their resume. So we see it, every resume we see has the same things. I would steer away from things which are very general and aim towards the things which are going to distinguish you from someone else.
Right. So that's really a given, a team player. Why would you be a team player?
Absolutely.
Right.
All right.
We certainly like to thank you, Tiffany and Matt, for your time today and sharing this information. We hope some people got a chance to write it down on that trusty pen. And this is the latest in a series of Job Hunting 101, and it's been a delight to have shared this information with our viewers today. I always say listeners because I'm thinking about radio, but this is television. So thank you so much for coming out and sharing this information. And here's hoping that we'll come to a situation of full employment. Everybody who wants to work can work.
I hope so
Yes,
too.
we're
and does
hoping,
work.
yes.
And we'd like to thank our audience for tuning in on this latest series of Job Hunting 101. I'm Dale Green, your host. Have a good day.